Right. Hey guys, Daniel James here. And today, what we're going to be doing is another TADay show. Today's topic is going to be the future of the artist versus the creator. And for those of you who don't know what a TADay show is, basically I'm going to talk about this premise up here, put forward my opinions on the subject, and then I'm going to be going over to my Discord and be bringing in callers live onto the show to put across their opinions and to perhaps challenge my opinion, see where we go, and basically just have a conversation about the topic. But anyway, so let me first explain what I mean by the future of the artist versus the creator. And this is a topic about artificial intelligence and content creation in general. So some of you may have seen over the past few videos, I've been composing to paintings, or at least landscape type paintings, or you may have seen them come up in the live streams. And now a lot of these I actually created myself using AI tools. And when I was using these, I came to the realization that it's only a matter of time until we have artificial intelligence, which can essentially do that for every aspect of creation, right? So 3D modeling, animation, 2D art, music eventually. I mean, we are quite litigious, but music. Anyway, so what's going to happen eventually is there's going to be an AI that makes the creation of any artistic field simple, too easy. It's going to make it so easy we don't even think about it, right? I'm going to put that over there because it's annoying me. It's going to be so easy to create for anybody to create a piece of 2D art. So the reason I brought up the paintings is I made those. I'm not a particularly great artist, and by that I mean sitting down and drawing. I couldn't draw a landscape by hand, but I could use that AI tool to create a piece of art that was good enough for me to compose music to, which meant that there was a concept artist somewhere along the line there that was now out of a job. There was an artist that was out of a job. And so when you look at that and you see the writing on the wall, this is coming for 3D art. This, like with the MetaHuman we just saw with Unreal, they just released, which is basically realistic 3D human creator for everybody. So that's a lot of 3D character artists that just went out the window. And obviously we're not at the point where we're replacing the top professionals yet. I'm talking at the minute, we're on the lower level, like people doing jobs for their friends, one-off jobs, gigs here and there. Those jobs are under threat currently. Anyway, so I looked towards the future and I said to myself, there's going to come a time where just doing the thing is no longer good enough. It's no longer impressive. No one will be amazed, impressed, or even care that you are able to write a symphony, because anybody can. Their nan could write a symphony by this point. I mean, the definition of them writing it would have changed by that point to the point where they would say that they've written it. But the AI would have written it, but they would claim ownership of that AI, therefore the music. So simply doing the work will no longer be a thing. It will have zero value. People will no longer pay people to write music for them. Why would you? The same as I didn't hire a concept artist to do the concept art for the thing I was doing. Someone will eventually, and the AI technology will eventually get to the point where someone who writes music will no longer get the job because the person just has an AI which will do about a comparable job to the lower end composer or someone just getting started. And so, again, as I mentioned, right now, I that AI tool saved me hiring a concept artist, because I was able to create my own creation and be more bespoke to what I wanted it to be without having to, split my vision amongst someone else. The AI was powerful enough for me to actually achieve the low-end goal that I had and wanted to achieve. So let's extrapolate that forward. So now we've lost the concept artist, and eventually the tools will cover everything. We'll lose the low-end 3D artist. And as I mentioned earlier, this hasn't replaced the top end. Like, the AI tools are not going to replace a guy who can, or, a person who can, do a full scene with characters and emotion and things like that. It hasn't got there, but it will get there. And that's the issue. And that's why I'm talking about this, the artist versus the creator, as a general subject, because there will come a point where everybody can do everything, right? everybody will be able to make a 2D piece of art. We demonstrated this on Discord I told people about a website called artbreeder.com. Go there and check it out for yourself. That's what I use to do my 2D art. And we had this wave of fresh art, and people were inspired and they were creating all this art. And so we probably created like 300 paintings within an hour, right? That's so the degree of value of what a painting is, or how value getting a painting is, just went through the floor for all of us, right? But what it did is open a door of creativity for each of those individual people. A concept artist has lost their job, but the creators in my Discord have just gained a valuable tool of creation. So here we're starting to unpack what an artist versus creator. So an artist is a person who specifies, is a person who does a singular field, right? Is a person who does a field and they get good at it. And I feel like in the future, the definition of a creator is going to be a person who makes it all themselves, right? And that's what I want to talk about when I talk about the future. I think that in the future, AI will make it so that the artist is no longer a valuable profession. It's no longer a thing, because everybody will be able to make something of comparable quality by themselves, to the point where that by itself no longer has value. In the future, I feel like it will be like creators. Sorry, I keep saying like, it's because my brain is still trying to function. In the future, there won't be artists. There will only be creators, because the value of being an artist will be nothing. There will be no value in being a singular artist anymore, because everybody else will be able to compete with you without being an artist. However, the one thing we've learned with artificial intelligence is it struggles with context. It struggles with understanding the current state of the human condition. That's something you're always going to need humans for. And humans will always endeavor to be creative, no matter what restrictions or how saturated a market is. We will always look for that thing that's saying something that isn't being said already. So in the future, I think it's going to be the people who have an interest in creativity in general, not someone who is like, I love music, the only thing I want to do in life is music. And like, that's something that always worried me as an individual, because I look around me and I see the interview with other composers, and they're always like, ever since I was a child, I needed to be a musician. Music speaks to me. It's all I've ever wanted to do. And I never had that. I had that, but I had that for creation. I had that for making stuff. All I want to do is make stuff. All I want to do is make cool shit. I never had it for one specific thing. I want to make cool pictures. I want to make cool movies. I want to make cool music. I want to make cool art. I want to make cool anything it is. I want to make something like that. And I always wondered why that bothered me. And when I look towards the future, I realized that either subconsciously or just by sheer luck and coincidence, I've always been preparing for what I think the future's actually going to be. And that is going to be a future where artists can make anything. And that's what you want. You want genuine creators. Sorry, I used the wrong word then. In my mind, the future is going to be a lot brighter, because the creators, the people with the vision of general creativity, people who have ambition of creation across everything, they want to create a vision that they have in their head to their vision, right? Their specific vision, without having to include other people in order to realize it. I think that's a great future. However, that is going to be a problem for those who are specified. And I think we are already at a point where specifying is going to be a problem. Like if you're starting a 4-year music course now, I think that by the time you finish it, creators will already start to be a thing. And the reason I say that is I can already see it happening by smarter people than I, right? The only reason I'm not already a creator is I'm not smart enough yet. The tools haven't matched my degree of intelligence, right? I am looking to do it because, like I said, my fire has always been for creation in general, right? For making a vision. And when I say a vision, I mean, I want something that is looks the way it's in my head, the 3D models are the way in my head, the acting is the way it's in my head, the music's the way, everything about it is mine, like I want to make stuff. And it's not out of some sense of narcissism, like I need people to value it, it's I need to make it. I don't know why, I just have this desire to make things. But anyway, so by the time you get out of school, you will be a specialist in a field that no longer has value. We can already see it. And that's what I was saying, the technology catching up to my intelligence level. I can already see there are artists out there who can already pull together the tools available to them to create their own visions. Like games like Amnesia, for example, were made by two guys, which to me says it's almost at the point that one of them could have done it. You know what I mean? The two, like Hybrid 2, for example, like I bring me and my musical sound design and things like that to Hybrid 2. Aaron brings all the programming and the planning and the infrastructure, like the smart stuff is Aaron. And then like, oh, mind you, I'm taking way too much credit for the creative stuff. Like Aaron does a load of the creative stuff too. But it's because my intelligence in programming isn't there. But once there's a way for me to create a program, it doesn't have to be the best program, but a program that sufficiently serves my needs to create the vision in my head, then I cease to be an artist and then become a creator, because then I can do the vision in my head to the level I need it to be. So all it's going to take for me is that line is constantly moving. The technological level is constantly moving. And it's, where is your intelligence level across all of creativity in order to transition from being an artist to being a creator? And I feel like my intelligence level is close. All I need is the things to get rid of the math, because I can 3D model. I need animation. I can, you know, I've been studying cinematography. I've been studying lighting. I imagine there'll be systems that set that up for you. But if you know how it's supposed to work and the reasons behind why you do it, you're more likely to create something that evokes the emotion that you want. And that's what I'm saying. So, and this is, again, this isn't something for me to be like, I saw this coming ahead of time. I just realized that either by sheer coincidence or subconscious planning, that I am setting myself up for what I think the future will genuinely be. And that is a future where we can all create everything. So it'll be those who have invested the time to figure out why we do everything across the genres. Why do you light something like that? Why do you do a 3D model in that fashion? Why would you animate that way as opposed to that way? Well, if you animate that way, it looks cartoony. If you animate that way, it looks too realistic. Why would you do this in music? Why would you do a minor chord into this? Why would you do A-B structure with the sound? Why would you do a low bassy sound effect there when clearly on the screen it's doing that? You see, those questions the AI won't ever answer, because those are contextual based on the human condition. They're subjective based on how humans feel about those subjects at a given time. So it will always require a human to answer those questions. However, the grunt work of getting that vision from your head into the world will be done by the AI at that point. So it's not creativity that's going away, it's craft that's going away. But then when technology improves, does the craft go away or does the craft evolve? Because when computers came along, the craft of writing music on paper was severely diminished. However, people didn't stop writing great music. So the art of writing music didn't go away, but the craft of writing sheet music diminished. And I feel like when AI comes away, I don't feel like writing music and individual parts will go away, but it will be severely diminished. People will do it less, and people will do it for effect. People will intentionally make shitty MIDI sounding mixes because all of these perfect AI mixes will sound boring and generic by that point. But it all ends up, and they all diverge at this point where you as a creator will be able to make everything, to the point where specializing in a single subject will be detrimental to your career. I genuinely believe that. So that is my position on the subject. Okay. That is my position on it. Now I want to hear what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree with the subject? What I'm going to do now is turn over to Discord. So I'm just going to pull them in, being as though he was there from the beginning. I'm going to bring Hal Valor in first. So hello, Hal Valor. Can you hear me? You are live on the stream.
I can hear you, and you're not choppy.
Awesome. Okay, so Hal Valor, the future of the artist versus the creator. Hopefully you heard my opening statements. I pass the mic over to you. Yeah. Take it away.
Well, you mentioned about like when computers came along, the art, as it were, of writing stuff down on sheet paper, on sheet music became diminished, right?
Yeah.
I think that's somewhat what will be when the AI becomes mainstream, as it were. It's not going to take away the creator's job. It's not going to take away the artist in us as humans. but it's going to be a tool to help us.
Right.
Right.
But what about the concept of an artist? Like the person the musician, like the composer today, how are they going to survive when the world is set up for creators?
Well,
I know that's a tricky and quite loaded question. So, I mean, if you'd rather like not answer, that's fine. I can put that to the next caller. But in general, that's kind of the point, or at least that's the crux of my argument, is that there is going to be a point where people like me, for example, someone who has an interest in all these things will be able to make it myself, right? So I won't need to hire a 3D artist to realize my vision because I am capable of doing it myself. So how do you see the future for people like that, like a 3D artist or a composer or a sound designer in the future when everybody can do it? Do they have to adapt, or do you think there's still a market for them?
There's going to be a fuckload of competition and saturation. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, there already is, right?
That the people who are able to do something new with the tools that they have, and they're able to do something which the AI, let's say, didn't think of or couldn't think of, those are going to be the guys sort of shining through the light, as it were.
Right. So you think there's still a place? So like there will still be, for example, let's say maybe like a John Williams and a Hans Zimmer, but anybody below that perhaps is fucked, basically. I mean, is that how you see it?
There will always be a place for humans because we can understand emotion, we understand context, we understand ideas, and AI just, it just operates on input and output. You tell it to give me a yellow picture, and it gives me a fucking yellow picture, right?
Right.
It won't understand, however, if the AI, as it were, is a composer. It won't understand, make this more green, or make this more cyan,
or why you would,
or make this more what color. Yeah, it doesn't understand why, and it won't understand the feeling of the color purple.
Right. Yes, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that like, do you not think that when, like, so yes, the creator, like, we will always need the human input, right? We will always need to tell the computer to make it purple because we know what the purple means and it doesn't. But but there will be a point, like at the minute, if we want that to happen, let's say that we're making an anime, like we make a movie and we need it color graded, for example, right? And to make it purple so that we get that feeling. At the minute, we need a person to do that for us, right? That person has a job. That is an artist. We call them a colorist, right? So when the AI comes along and you just say, do it purple, what is that colorist now going to do? That person who used to get hired, like, what is the future for them?
Fine-tuning, I guess.
Fine-tuning. So you think, in fact, that's a very good point. So you think in the future the AI will take it 90% of the way and you will still have...
Yes. The human needs to be there for the oversight because the AI can't get everything right. Look at fucking Terminator. They destroyed the humans. They had no oversight.
That was also fictional, but I mean, we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, okay. So thank you so much for your input there, Hal Vallet. Like genuinely, you opened up a new thought process for me there. Is there anything you'd like to say to the chat room before we move on? We've got to get through them all. We've got a few people waiting. So
take care of yourselves. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Wise words from the court jester. So everybody in the chat room, please say thank you to Hal Vallet for calling in. So Hal Vallet made a great point there, is that the artists of today may not go away, but they may have to shift their job. They may end up just being the fixers. And how do you feel about that? I am genuinely curious about that. How do you feel about that in the chat room? So let's say that you've grown up, you love music. Music is all you ever cared for. And then you get a job as a musician, but the only jobs you can get is fixing AI music. So someone says, I've made this music with the AI. It needs some tweaks. Fix it. How do you feel about that being your job from that point on? Because you have to remember, the piece of music he may have already written is going to be able to compete with anything you could write yourself. But they still need you and your human element and musical understanding to fix it. Do you still want to be a composer at that point? Is that the career you envisioned? If not, how do you deal with that situation? How do you How do you come around it? So we're going to move on to the next one. I'm just going to pull in the next name. So next up we have, it's Velvet. You are now live on the stream. Can you hear me?
Oh shit, what up?
Oh God, you are super quiet. Can you turn up at all? Turn up your mic.
Hello?
Hello?
Is this shit working or what?
There we go. So I always call you Velvet just for the chat room so that you can see it. Like, it's because it's Velvia. It's Velvia. I can't believe it's not Velvia. Like, whatever. Anyway, so Velvet, we're talking about the future of the artist versus the creator. So you just heard the point that how Vala made. Like, would you like to comment further on that, perhaps, about the artists becoming fixers for the creators in the future, or potentially, artists going away in general? What are your thoughts on the topic? I pass the mic over to you.
Well, I mean, it's sad in a way because art is one of the few things humans can do while not fucking each other out. But yeah, you're right. It's gonna get there, and what Hallwall said, it will be like that, but just in the beginning. Like, the fucking AI will get better eventually.
Right. And so do you think that the concept of the artist will go away just completely? So how Vala did bring up the compromise, which was that artists will still exist, but they'll exist to fix AI work. Do you think they'll go away completely?
No, I think they will become like creators, like you say. That will be like the thing. It's like now musicians with social media and stuff, like they don't see social media as a tool to get known. Like, I don't know if I'm explaining myself. Like, I know a lot of musicians that don't want to get into social media because it's not music and it's what they want to do, just music, but that's not how it works anymore. It will be the same with AI.
Right. And so you think that like people will adapt, but begrudgingly. So people don't want to change, but people will. You think people will, like, so in the previous example, that colorist whose sole job at the minute is to color someone's movie, you think they will adapt and they will also become a musician. They will also become a 3D artist. And you have to remember, I'm talking about a future where the tools are easy. Right now, again, go to artbreeder.com if you don't know what I'm talking about, how easy it can be to create. I'm talking about that degree of simplicity where, like, I look at the tool, I move some faders until it's exactly how I want it to be, and then it's done. That will be the future for everything. Do you see all of those artists changing and learning all of the other fields? Like, I guess my issue, or at least my problem, the point I'm trying to get at, is those people who don't have interest in the other fields. What happens to, and I guess that's what I mean by an artist. So these people who grow up and it's like, my only love is music. What happens when all of the when they get into a future where everybody who used to hire them to do the music can now not only do music themselves at a similar level, but can also do everything else and make a movie and a music video to go along? Like, what does that artist do? Do they just have to change their job? Or do you think it's like the will to create is so strong that they'll, adapt and become the musician and the sound designer?
I mean, yeah, if it will be like, if you want to do that, you adapt or you disappear. Like, it's as simple as that.
Adapt or die, I believe is the phrase. And that's evolution basically, in a nutshell, right? But how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's a good thing for me, like creativity, or a bad thing in general? Like, because I just to put it forward, I think it's going to be a good thing, because I feel like right now we have really creative people who are restricted by the technology. They have ideas and concepts which are just impossible to explain to someone else, so their vision never gets realized. So we're going to start seeing that, like, almost the schizophrenic approach that people have, because they can in its entirety tell a story, whereas an artist can't. Like, that's what I'm saying, that I don't feel like there's a future for a specialized artist, which I think is also what you were saying. So I feel like I just made more of a statement.
I agree completely with you. Yeah.
So how do you feel about it?
It's going to be like that. It's not as, like, people used to like look at these things like, oh, but AI is going to take over our things, whatever. But fucking look at this shit like an opportunity. Like,
Right,
it
I
might
agree.
get you doing things like you didn't think before just because
Right.
it's a new thing.
Absolutely agree. But thank you so much. I actually want to end that on that note because I fundamentally agree with that. It's like, yes, it's opening up opportunities, and that's what I'm saying. It's people. I imagine like you, because you seem like to be of similar mind to me. It's like I've always wanted. Like when I became a composer, it's the path of least resistance. I wanted to create, and I was the best at music, like, so I put all my energy into being a composer and a musician because it's where my skill set lies. I can do it, and I can do it pretty well. And the other things I can do, and I have an interest and I understand how, but the technology goes beyond my ability. And as soon as the AI makes it so that my ability is good enough to use them, all of a sudden, I can make all of these creative things. How can that not be an opportunity? So I absolutely agree with the sentiment. I assume that's what you were saying.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for calling in. Is there anything you would like to say to the chat room before we move on?
Yo, chat, Cubase sucks.
And on that note, a huge thank in the chat room for Velvet, for fuck's sake, for joining in and putting across his. So that, again, more interesting. It opens up more opportunities. AI will open up more opportunities for the generally creative. But that brings up the point. It's what is more artistic? Is it more artistic? And of course, this is a debate that will go on forever. Is it more artistic for an artist to make a picture by hand than, let's say, a creator who makes an entire movie and everything within it, but uses AI for the legwork? Like, that is the biggest kind of artistic debate that we're going to have in the future. It's inevitable. The writing is on the wall. We're already sort of getting into it now. Like, I'm almost at the point where I could use technology to do it all myself, especially with engines like Unreal Engine, which are free and being used at cinematic level, and they're, user friendly. And there's plugins that keep coming out that make that even easier. There'll come a point where we are weighing up the human, because you have to, what is that? Where is the artistry? Is the artistry using the muscles in the body to shape the paintbrush as it comes across is that the artistry? Is the craft of doing it itself the art? Or is it the artistic intent? Let's say that someone painted a picture, right? But I made the exact same picture using artificial intelligence. Is mine worth less, even if the artistic intent was the same going into it? Like, is the end result what makes it art? Is it the craft of putting the physical pencil to the paper, or is it the idea? These are these are the arguments we're going to have. And so I'm putting that out there now because I would like some of the chat, some of the people calling in to perhaps touch on that. Is it more artistic one way round or the other? Because if we value, the reason I bring that up, if we value the work of a creator, and by that I mean someone where we value the artistic intent. So they didn't paint every painting themselves. They didn't write every note of music by themselves, but the intent was what they wanted. And the end result is what they would have got had they done it themselves manually, but the AI did the grunt work. If we value that, we value artistic intent and not artistic craft in the future, then creators win, hands down. Artists can't compete because creators can do everything and it's valued. But if we don't value that, then artists will still have value because, and I guess that's literally what it comes down to. What do we value? The artistic craft of physically doing it ourselves, or the artistic intent, the idea behind the art, the reason we do it? These are the kind of topics we have to discuss. So anyway, let's move on to our next caller. I'm going to bring in, so here we have Spaghetti Doggo. You are live on the stream. Can you hear me?
Oh, I'm live.
Oh God, you're live. You're live and very quiet. Hang on, I'm turning you up. Speak. There we go.
I can put the microphone closer to me if you.
That's fine. I've turned it up. So hopefully you just heard the points I put across. Will we value the work of a creator who used AI in the future, or will we value only the artistic craft of putting pencil to paper? How do you feel on the subject in general? I give the mic to you.
Well, first of all, hi to everyone.
Hello.
I've never had such a such a wide audience to speak to. My background is at least coming from a very traditional musical style of writing, orchestral, classical stuff, and it does give you a bit of an itch when you come from that very conservatory classroom style music where someone in the future can tell you, yeah, I can just make that. Look at, I just put in this, press this button, and voila, that's it.
Right.
It makes you itch inside. Now the point is, do you keep on that itch in a bad way or a good way? And another question that comes to my mind is, just as you said, just what you said in a bit of a different manner. Let's say, you know what, today on the news, there was a sad article about, or a sad news stuff article about some people who died in some accident, and they had an interview with their parents. And the music there was basically some minor and major chords arpeggiated on a piano with some soft strings.
As you would expect, right?
Now, since the main focus is, the parent, and there is not too much emotion you can convey there without making a bit of conflict between, the music and whatever's coming onto you, in whatever they are saying. So this type of music, I do believe, we might be able to replace it almost completely, since let's just assume the art breeder thing. By the way, when people started mentioning the AI thing, I thought that it was an Audio Imperia thing, and I lost my mind because I searched it and I couldn't find it. And okay, so let's say you're gonna have like drums 17, strings 80, piano, I don't know, 30, something like this.
Yeah.
And in that case, I do believe it will be enough.
Right.
Unfortunately,
so it's the lower
I don't
end.
feel like
it's the lower end market that's at risk, you feel like. The incidental music, like music you hear over a news broadcast, like they're going to be replaced, but you feel like the high end will remain at the artist level rather than... So you feel like in the future, we're still going to have teams because people want to create as a team. So you'll still have a director, you'll still have an actor, you'll still have a game developer, you still have a 3D artist, because people want to specialize. And you think there'll still be value of that at the high end, even though the people who play the games might have the technology to do all that themselves.
Again, it all comes to the other side, where you're expected something of great detail. When you have the director who wants the guy to have exactly a purple eye patch with a golden lining, then you might come to, the fine-tuning work, the more in detail.
Can I hit you with a hypothetical, though? But what happens when the technology gets to a point where you can do that? Like where AI is at detail level, where you can change the eye patch, you can change the eye color, you can change how many eyelashes he has. Like you can go down to any detail you want, and it's simple. You don't even have to type it. You just say, "Hey, supercomputer, make his eye purple," and it does it. Obviously, the human still needs to make that decision and needs to know why you would change it to purple. That's never going to go away. But my point is, why would a director hire an artist to do that when they could just tell a computer to do it? Like, where is the value of the artist in that scenario?
Well, that to me goes in two different directions, and one of them is a bit foolish, but okay, let's say this. You watch the credits of a movie.
Right.
And
just one credit.
In the music, you don't actually see a composer job. You see some sort of, let's say, musical editor or something of the sort. You don't actually see the composer job.
Right.
So for the consumer, this goes two ways. Supposedly the music is good.
Right.
It's fine. It's acceptable. It's not Hans Zimmer or John Williams level, or let's say it is.
Okay.
So one way it goes is the consumer says, "Oh wow, they couldn't even hire a composer. They just used AI on this. It's kind of lazy." And the other one goes, "Oh, they didn't even hire a composer and they made it with AI, that's amazing.
Right.
So it actually very much depends way more than how we see it on how the consumer sees it.
So it's a societal level issue. It's society in general has to decide what they value. Do they value the and I think that's genuinely my point. It's like, will we value the artistic intent or the artistic craft? Because to be a creator, for someone to, like, just imagine me, just as an example, if I made something entirely by myself, right? Obviously, I couldn't do the artistic craft. It would take too long and it would be too arduous for me to do every individual aspect by myself. But the end result is exactly my vision. It's my artistic intent. Like, do you think people will value that? Or do you think that even though it's singularly me and it's my artistic vision and I'm saying exactly what I want to say in the way I want to say it as an artist, you know, like that's what artists do. But right now the technology means we physically have to paint the thing. We physically have to 3D model it. So the question does come down to, is it the craft that society values, the physical being able to do it? Is that what makes it artistic? Is that what makes us value it as society? Like, I can't do that and that person can, therefore I value it. Or do they value the idea behind it? Like a Banksy, for example, is a stencil. Is a stencil spray paint. So anybody could feasibly stencil and spray paint the thing, but it's the thought behind what he's doing that makes it art. So do you think that they will converge, or do you think that one will win out? Or do you think that society will actually just accept both, perhaps?
Of course, my optimistic thought as a person who put a lot of hours into practice and theory is that the artist might somehow prevail in society. Now, considering the state today of the market, where you have autotunes and you have loops and you have MIDI chord packs, and that's just speaking in the musical terms. You have a lot of prepared stuff out of music. And generally, we as a society come to a matter that we want to consume and consume more. And when we consume at the same rate, we get bored and we want something new. And when the opportunity will come to have more content quicker, maybe, even better. I don't like the content, I'll make it myself.
Yeah. So do you think...
I don't like...
Oh, God.
So in that term, I do think that the creator will triumph in a significant way, and the artist might have to go to teach other artists in the term of art, to have it as your thing.
So that actually brings up, this brings me back to your initial point, which is actually a good way of tying it back around. So you actually said you're at college and you learned the proper way to do and it's sort of annoying or frustrating that that in the future someone's going to be able to push a button and just do everything that you just spent a couple of years learning. Obviously that's a frustration. So do you think perhaps it's time for music educational systems to accept the reality that the creative future is coming? The future for being a musician artist is there, but it's not going to be as valued perhaps it was. And instead of they should always teach the craft of music, right? The craft of writing music, just as an institution. Historically, they should keep it. They should never get rid of it. But do you think that the education system for people who want to go out into the world and be practical composers, people who work for a living, not people who just write music because they have an artistic vision. I mean, people who want to go write music for films and things like that. Do you think perhaps they should be teaching them the reasons why you do things as opposed to the craft of doing it themselves? Because like I said, you studied for years how to do the craft, and now some kid can just push a button or get a chord pack and just do the exact same thing without having to think about it or even knowing how to do it. But the reason you'll still have an advantage over them is the reasons why you would use that chord or why you would use this certain thing. All the AI does is get rid of the craft of physically doing it. It's not getting rid of what you were going to do in the first place. So I feel like there's still value in the education of artists artistry. Absolutely. You can still teach the arts of cinematography. You can still teach the arts of composing, but you just don't teach the craft of it as hard. You don't teach how to physically set the things up. You teach the reasons behind why you do them, because that's what in the future, when you've got AI, that's what the creator's job is going to be. Why do I light a scene like this? Why do I change the eye patch to purple? Why do I add more eyelashes? You know what I mean? It's the why is what the creator is. And that's all an artist does now. But once they finish answering the question, why would I change it to purple? It just means they physically have to go do it themselves. And so that's with the educational system, I think a shift they're going to have to make. I mean, just quickly, because we are going to have to move to another caller, but do you feel like that's probably going how to be?
Yes, I did want to have a final point.
Sure, go for it.
Yes, I will be starting music in a university, and I will tell you honestly, supposedly I would keep my composition skills and my piano skills, but I would lose knowledge of my musical literature.
Right.
I would feel a lesser musician because I would not know of the discoveries and how things were actually made for the first time in music.
Right.
But
imagine, sorry. Go on. Sorry.
Okay, I do feel there should be a place where you can learn the craft, the most traditional parts of the craft, and I do feel that there should be some new way to learn how to express yourself in every possible standard. But my last thing that I will say is the person with the MIDI pack that slaps it on the track, and he listens to it, and something's a bit off. This is where the tiniest speck of artists will help you, how to say it, just remove the last layer of rust from exactly what you want,
right,
and not compensate for the MIDI pack.
Right. So like as a creator, you just said exactly what I think I was saying is you will still need to answer the questions why you're doing stuff. Like if it's not working, why isn't it working? And you have to learn why it doesn't work. But that, you know what I mean? That the AI will never understand the why. The AI can only ever replace the manual doing. Right. I agree with it. But hey, anyway, Spaghetti, we're going to have to move on to the next caller. Thank you so much,
everyone. You're all great. I might be streaming Complete 13 at some point in the future. Stay tuned. I love you all. Goodbye.
Pimping his stream, the little. Anyway, I'm joking. That's fine. But he made some great points. Then it's like if it does come down to your own sense of self-value as well. I mean, if you don't feel like a creator by using AI, why would you do it? But then again, if Beethoven's Fifth Symphony didn't exist and you created it with AI, would it be a lesser piece of music? It's still a great piece of music. However it was made, Beethoven's Fifth is amazing. So, would we value it less had an AI created it, even though it is fantastic? These are the difficult questions. And of course, it all comes down to art. So anyway, let me pull in the next one. I'm going to pull in Mirando. You are live on the stream. Can you hear me?
I think there are people before me that should talk.
You think? Okay.
Because I joined, but okay. I can.
No, you had just say, fuck off. No. I'll call Mirando in a second. No, I'm joking. Right. Okay. Let's pull in. Oh, what did it say? T Herenicus? T Herenicus, you are live on the stream.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Fantastic. So, the artist versus the creator. I pass the mic over to you. Have your say.
Right on. Yeah, it's nice to be here. And I just, I have to agree with your position on the direction that we're going into as artists, as the creator. And I think the end result is very important. And I guess I just had a comment that might be kind of obvious, but I wanted to highlight for consideration, especially about that human element where we need to use these AI tools in context.
Right.
Because I assume, the interaction that we use to, interact with and absorb this AI art and music is going to be more advanced. And I don't know what that technology looks like, if we're in virtual reality with surround sound, or we can hear, sub bass on our cell phones. But I think that the technology might drive aspects of what this AI content is and what is most valued. So, I think what's needed to write well in that scenario for that technology might be different. And I think that kind of depends on if we're maturing some of these AI tools, with the considerations of our listening and visual environment as well in the future. So I think these humans are going to we're going to have a job as kind of a content, creative director, kind of arranging tools and choosing the right tools together. So I think, ultimately, job as composer, we need to be adapting to that changing environment. So I just wanted to highlight that.
But how do you think society in general will value an artist when creators exist? So like, let's say, for example, you are a creator, right? You have a creative interest in everything, and you've studied the reasons why. And so you know how to use your AI correctly, right? You've got the correct mindset, and your AI tools, and you could make like the next Dark Knight Rises movie by yourself, right? And you make it.
Yeah.
Now, how does society value just a composer by that point? Keeping in mind that you've created this entire thing, are they considered a lesser form of art by this point because they're only a singular field? Or do you think society values perhaps an artist more because they dedicate, because they are solely focusing on a single thing? What do you think?
I mean, that's a difficult question, because I am assuming that you're working as in some aspects as part of a team. So that's why I just think the end result is going to be the most important thing. Right. That's tough. I mean, I'll leave that answer for the next caller.
It's more like so if we get to a point where like the creative people can make entire projects, right? Do you think we'll still value music independent of everything else? So let's say that like you make a cool song using your AI, but not only do you make a cool song, you make a cool music video to go with it, and a video game that tells the story. You know what I mean? Because it's that easy, right? That's the future. So this one piece of music has got this entire creative package around it, right? Video game, movie, everything. You've made it all yourself, right? Do we still value an individual piece of music in isolation by an artist that doesn't do everything? What do you think?
I would say, if it's compelling enough and an already saturated and even going to be even more saturated market, I think the answer is yes. Right. I think there's always going to be those folks that can pull and kind of, create that world and integrate all these different components together. And I think that, the cream will rise to the top in that regard.
But do you think the artist?
I think yes.
But do you think the artist becomes a niche almost? You know what I mean? Like, so the point of an artist isn't to create art, it's to create art different from AI. Like it ceases to be a endeavor by itself. It is incumbent on being anti-AI, perhaps.
You're blowing my mind on a Saturday. I don't know. That's a great question.
Hey, it's all cool, man. If you feel like you've said everything you want to say, let me know, and we can absolutely would you like to say something to the chat room before we jump on? Thank you so much for calling in, by the way.
I'll pass the torch. Thank you. Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick is the lesson of the day. Thank you so much for calling in. Everybody give T. Herenicus a huge clapper in the chat for calling in. Okay, so let's move on to, I feel like this has been here for a while. Doves Go West, you are now live on the stream. Can you hear me? Doves Go West. I can see that you're there, but it looks like you're muted. I'll give you 5 more seconds, and then we'll move on to someone else. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we'll just move on to someone else until hopefully you can get that sorted. Is Earl Nick Malco. Earl Nick Malco, you are live on the stream. Can you hear me? Is this going to be 2 in a row?
Hey.
Hey, there he is. Let me just turn you up a little bit.
I've never had such a quick connection on my streams. That feels really good.
Awesome. You've got a quick connection. So Earl Nick Malco, the artist versus the creator. Hopefully you've heard some of the points I've put forward so far. How do you feel about the subject? I pass the mic over to you.
Well, I definitely do agree with you on a lot of points. So I definitely think that idea will be much more important than how you get to this point, like how you create the track on its own. And if you look at what's happening at the moment, even if it's not 100% AI, you can see that we're already getting tools every month that allow us to like take libraries like, for example, I don't know, Westwood instruments or let's say action strings. They allow us to enhance our vision of music without actually having to be technically skilled.
Right.
And yeah, I definitely feel like in the future we'll get even more tools like that. And the vision that you have in music will be much more important than how you're doing things.
So you think it's going to be a fundamental change in how we approach it? So it's not like, for example, education will shift, as I mentioned earlier. It will shift yeah. So you were saying that tools are coming out every month that already make our life easier. Let's put it that way. But the thing that I was thinking as you were saying that is it's not changing what we were planning to do in the first place. It just makes doing it easier, right? So there's going to come a point, and obviously, like, AI will get to a point where it's indistinguishable. But for as long as I'm alive, I think it's probably not going to be that bad. But it's more like right now, if an AI tool existed, I think I would use it better than someone who'd never written music before. I have an understanding of music creation, just like fundamentally in general. Like, I've studied it, but I understand how it works and why it works in certain ways. So like our previous callers mentioned, if they don't know how to fix it, like they don't know how to answer the why, they're fucked, basically. So there's going to come a point where, like, composers know how to do it. We're not changing what we would have done. But the tool we want tools that make it so we don't have to physically do it. Like, I know how to make an ostinato. Da, 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 da. I know how to physically do that. I just don't want to have to do it every time, right? But when you make a tool that does that for you, people who don't know how to do that manually will do it, and it will be great, and they'll write great music, but they don't understand the fundamental of why you would do that in the first place, right? So then music will shift because we'll have people able to write great music without knowing why you make it. So do you think perhaps artists will always sort of remain because they will be, whilst everybody can create, not everybody makes, like we've seen with like music, just because everybody can make music nowadays doesn't mean they're making good music. Just because everybody can make an art breeder thing doesn't make them making great paintings. I mean, there will come a point where everybody can make great things, but do you think the why, the artistry will ever go away? The answering the question why? Do you think AI will ever answer the question why?
I agree with you. So I would say that I don't think that AI will completely replace the artists.
Mm-hmm.
Like as the previous callers said, AI doesn't have this ability to understand the emotion, like the intent behind the music, behind the music and the art in general. But I had a theory. Maybe if we ever come to the point where AI is capable of doing such a thing that it can actually create convincing music with emotion. If we ever come to this point, I feel like artists who do everything on their own, so like the way we're doing it right now, they might get a higher value, but a different value than they have now. So for example, if we take the situation with vinyl
Right.
or cassette tapes. They used to be popular because they were the only thing existing in the moment. Then they disappeared for some time because we had some better technologies.
Right.
And now they're just coming back to life because, I don't know, because some people want to have this feeling that they had before, or they want this exact. Yeah, I would say they want this exact type of feeling.
So people want like a general human nostalgia. Like, we will always crave humans doing the art because for just a sense of humanity, like we want it to feel human. So you think society will continue to value that even. So for you, like, I think that is saying that you do put value in the artistic craft, not just the creative intent. So even like. So just as a hypothetical, would you value my music more or less What would you value? Let's say, for example, I wrote an ostinato. By that reckoning, an ostinato that I programmed by hand would be more socially respected than if I made the exact same thing by an AI, even if I intended it to be the same. Like, I understand, like, if the AI just writes it for you, I understand that. But if artistic intent doesn't change, why would it be more value for a human to do it than an AI? Like, it's the AI doing it is still like, it's still humanity because it's still my idea. It's just I'm not physically doing it. It's the same as when I use MIDI. I'm not physically using an actual violin. It's, you know, it's a replacement, but it's still my idea. The art is the idea, right? That's what I believe. I always believe the art is the idea. The end result, what you get to at the end, is the art. How you get there is the debate on whether or not it's art. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like the craft itself in the future is going to be the art of it, because technology has always dictated what you need to do in order to do the craft. Before there were string instruments, there were no string players. So, I mean, that's a weird comparison. I know that feels like an unfair one as well, but it's like that, people weren't learning to, you know, play string instruments. Is a very complicated thing to do because strings didn't exist. So the craft didn't exist. But when strings came along, the craft was learning to play strings and do it. So when technology came along that allowed me to compose, why is it considered cheating and not just an evolution of the craft? Why is AI not just considered an evolution of the craft? Humans created the AI as a tool to get rid of the legwork required in order to actualize an artistic vision. I do agree, though, that, like, I feel, again, sorry, I'm more just shouting points at you rather than asking a question. But I do wonder if we'll look at artistry as a historical thing. Do you think that's perhaps a future where we look at people doing art manually as like cavemen doing drawings on the wall? We'll look at like Da Vinci as like they had to do that by hand, or Michelangelo's roof is like he had to do that by hand. Do you think we'll change society and look at art as a historical thing?
Now, that's a good question. Well, I definitely do agree with you. Like, personally, I never really care how the person comes to the final result. What I care for is how it sounds and what emotion it provokes. So if a person managed to actually provoke an emotion in me, managed to to make this connection between his art and his listeners, I would say, then he succeeded. So for me, it's no difference if you used, I don't know, a MIDI pack or anything else. Like, but practically loops are the same thing. It's something that we already created, but everyone uses it over and over again. And I don't feel like it's cheating.
Right. But what if he just pushed one button and it, like, to play devil's advocate, if he pushed one button, it randomized the track, but it emotionally connected with you? How do you feel about him as an artist in that situation?
Well, now, I mean, like, if it's that simple, then probably not, because
it's a weird question. Where is the line? What do we put value in? Because I agree with you. I always argue, and sorry, that was a completely facetious and unanswerable question. And I agree with you. It's like, where do we draw the line? Like, because I agree, end result is what matters. But if I know that all they did was randomize it and they did nothing, no effort or anything, it was pure luck, then all of a sudden it doesn't feel as special. So it can't just be end result. So there has to be a degree, like you were saying, a degree of humanity. There has to be something human. There has to be a human making decisions somewhere along the line in order for me to respect it. It's a weird thing. But on that note, I'm going to have to move to another caller. Thank you so much for your input. Is there anything you would like to say to the chat room before we move on?
Thank you. And yeah, use Vital and write blockbusters on an iPad while you still can before AI overthrows us.
Fair play. Thank you so much, everybody. Huge clappers in the chat for Mr. Malco. Right, so let's bring in. Well, that was before we move on. That was some interesting topics. Do you think art will just go away as being a thing and something we look at historically, like people doing physical art, people actually painting on canvas? Will society value that for the next 500 years? Genuinely, think about it. Think about how many professions that felt like they would last a lifetime have been replaced by technological advancements, right? And when I look at art, I think to myself, why is it any different? Why would art survive a technological revolution if everybody had the ability to make bread at home just by pushing a button? Why would they go to the supermarket and buy bread? And then people who grow wheat, I mean, I assume you still need wheat, but like people who make bread in the supply chain to make bread would have a very difficult question on their hands whether or not they stay in the bread making business. Now, I don't understand why we seem to assume that art won't go the same way to a point. Like, why do you think that is? Why do you think that humanity will always value people physically putting a picture from their mind onto a screen when a computer can just give you variations of anything you're feeling in that moment? I mean, it does speak to a more individual society, a society where everybody lives in their own bubble. I mean, we've seen it with social media where society was like international or nation. You were valued by your nation, and now with social media, you're valued by your bubble. You're valued by the group that agrees with you and everything you believe. And in the future, when we have AI, perhaps we won't even value other people as much anymore. Like think about the way it's going. If you have the ability to create your own art, let's say that you're sitting at home and you want to watch a movie. What if AI's got to the point where Disney has like an AI thing where an AI tool, which is so advanced, you push a button and it makes an amalgamation. It combines all the Avengers movie and creates a brand new Marvel movie for you, right? Well, that could be a future. At that point, it becomes about being a technological thing, and there's no room for artistry at all. I mean, like, there's so many different futures we could go down. But the problem is, and like we were saying with the last caller, it's like, where do we draw the line? What do we value? What do we value as a thing? Perhaps a creator is just going to be a form of artist. Perhaps this is all just worry and there's nothing to worry about. Perhaps in the future, people who can do everything are just considered a different form of artist. So you'll have 3D modelers, you'll have musicians, composers, you'll have sound designers, and then you'll have creators. You'll have those weird people that could just do it all, but they do it with AI. Maybe they're not respected at all. Who knows? Let's ask our next caller, Mirando. Mirando, you're now back live on the stream. I felt like two callers was enough to hide my shame. I'm just pulling whoever's at the bottom of the list, but thanks for shaming me, Matt. No, I'm joking. But how do you feel about that? Do you feel the future will even have art within it? Do you feel that AI will dominate us, completely replace us? I hand the mic over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Well, I have kind of different POV on that because we look at the things from the perspective of I can do it all by myself. Why would I choose this over that? Why should I work with other people, artists, whatever? I can do the same with AI. Well, the thing is, we all missing here is, can I imagine myself in 10 years sitting in dark room, surrounded by amazing PCs that do everything for me, and I don't exchange a word of my mind and my expression, the things that I want to express with other human beings? I think it would be a very sad world for creators, like artists, whoever it is. And I don't think creative minds, which are quite vulnerable in terms of like mind and feelings, it would be very destructive like environment to work in. So I think in the end, our passion that we want to actually express and show to other people, like, we will tend to go for humans anyway with help of AI, but I don't think we will just neglect human for the case of, well, savings, I guess, and that I want like general, like, to see everything that I want just with AI.
Right.
And if it would kill creativity more than actually help, because we will be struck in quite a bubble of being just surrounded by PCs, and we wouldn't express a word to other people, which will be very destructive, I think.
Right, but you look at society. Right now, society values artists, right? We are the only way to provide entertainment, right? If they want music, they need a composer to write music. If they want a movie, they need a director, they need a filmmaker. But what happens in a future where they can basically almost make it themselves? You know, like when there's a future where artists are undervalued, undervalued to the point where someone can just do it themselves, why would they want a composer to write the music if they could, for example, just click a button and say, like, you know what, today I feel like listening to some like easy jazz. So they just randomize and the thing makes music for them. Like, why would they still value an artist in that world? Because AI will get to that point.
Well, I think, as I said, like the human unit is quite important in our life, no matter what, because we are humans. We are made to work with the others. And I also think that AI can be like amazing tool, and it will probably in the beginning like make a lot of new things that we don't even think we can do, or maybe because what I think about art is always discovering new things. Like, because I really love this moment when I listen to new music I've never heard before. It's like, holy shit, how can you do this? And with AI, we will of course go into that place, but at some point, even AI can be a little bit like, I don't know, getting boring, because it's AI. We have to learn it. We have to, I mean, teach it. Okay? If we don't like make new stuff all the time that are apparent to us as nice, AI won't notice. So we have to keep on creating. And also, especially the artists, because 3D art and all this stuff is like, yeah, it's quite a thing when you can just smash face with NVIDIA in 5 seconds. It's insane. But I can't imagine, let's say, like Hideo Kojima studio being only Hideo Kojima and making his game only with super PCs.
That'd be a game.
Can't see that thing. It won't happen.
Nobody to say no to Kojima would be quite a project.
Yeah, it could be. Actually, maybe I said the wrong example, because Hideo Kojima actually could do this.
Yeah, that would be quite the experience.
Yeah, it could be quite interesting project, but I can't see like permanent thing, like long time thing. Just because we are humans, we want to express our opinions toward the others. We want this collision of things. We can't just have AI that we know it's AI in our mind, because we are just people.
Right.
It's impossible, but it will become like, the market will become like very, very blunt at some point. And I really love like finding new niche stuff that are happening right now in music and in video games, for example.
Right, I'm going to have to stop you there, though, because we have to define what we mean by an artist in this regard, because you have to look at, like, we value humanity, right? We value the humanity of art, right? I understand that as a principle. But to what degree? Like, a texture artist is an artist. But if you're a 3D modeler and you can make textures yourself, all of a sudden because of an AI, you wouldn't value the art of the texture artist. If you're a 3D modeler, right, you obviously value the artistry of 3D modeling. But if you're making a game and you can make a 3D model yourself, you don't value the artistry of the 3D modeler anymore. You see what I mean? It's like a snowball effect. It's like we value it, but when we put it down to a practical thing, I don't think people will value it if they can do it themselves. Like, we value humanity, but only because humans are currently the only way to reach our end goals. If we could do everything ourselves, we wouldn't include other people. I genuinely believe that. I think humans would rather do everything themselves. So like, yes, we value humanity, but we're looking at that with 2021 eyes. We value it because only humans can do it at the minute. Like,
but what in 300 years, for example, right?
Yeah, like
when the AI will be insane.
In 300 years, like, why? That's what I'm saying. At the minute, I value everybody in the bread supply chain. I value the humanity of that so hard. But if I could make bread at home by pushing a button, I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, my humanity goes, because all of a sudden that isn't an issue that affects me directly. And as brutal as that sounds, most humans only care about themselves, not because they're selfish. We're just programmed that way. We only focus on our own problems because we're the only ones that have to deal with them.
Yeah, I think that the very important aspect in the future of it will be the end consumer and who's watching at it, what we do, because there will be people that, like, I bet 50% of people, when they go to see the movie, they don't even stay at credits. A lot of people don't really care about who made the music, how it's done. And same with games. Who is the 3D modeler? We already huge amount of people who play games don't really bother who made it. I mean, we really know big names, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's because the value of that artist is going down.
Yeah.
People just don't care. Like, if imagine you had like a 3D modeler today, right? Like the quality of a 3D model, and he did that in the 90s. He'd be super famous, right? Like he'd be talent above. But over time, the tools to make 3D art have got so good that it's
And
very
we have
common.
millions of 3D artists, right?
But it's very
Okay.
common to see quality 3D art everywhere, right? So being a
it's
good
quite
3D
common now.
artist isn't valuable because seemingly everybody could do it because we're surrounded by great 3D art. The same with music. We're surrounded by great music. So that's why no one really buys music anymore, because back in the day, we only valued musicians, that got famous back in the day because they were the only ones you could hear. Now you can hear everybody, right? So we don't value that. And we thought we did. We thought we valued the musicians themselves because they were so great. And it's like, well, mostly just because they were the only ones that we could listen to, you know. If we could listen to everybody, like imagine when the Beatles were getting famous, right? When they were first getting famous.
Yeah.
If the world had access to all of the music at the time, like they do now, Spotify existed back there, would they have been as big? I mean, like, their music's amazing, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the Beatles are shit, but I'm saying if they had access to every piece of music in the world, would the Beatles have climbed to the top over everything else at the time? Or was the fact that they were one of the very few people that got record deals in that day and had the money to travel the world, people didn't have a lot of options to choose from, so we put value in it. And that's what I mean, going back to your point, is that we value the humanity of creation. When we get to a point, I was going to say, when we get to a point where everybody can do it, and we no longer value the fact that someone can do it, just because you can write a symphony doesn't make you special anymore. Will we not perhaps value those who have artistic intent instead of artistic craft? And that, to me, that's a creator, a person who can combine everything to go for an artistic intent, because that's the only thing an AI at the minute can't replicate, because it can't replace your intent. It can't replace what you were trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Sorry, over to you.
Yeah. That actually made me think about one thing.
Sure.
That the how do we perceive this? Because as I said, like, not really many people will care who made now the things. I think that the only people care about things, especially art, are the people that are moved by it.
Right.
Because it's not a thing for everybody. Like some stuff is not for me. I don't really care, but for some people, it will be passion of their life, and they will be knowing every name in the industry, right?
Right.
So I think it will be just splitted with years. We'll be see more and more like really small groups, really like closed, like groups of people who really like are into these things, and they really create communities around each thing. And I think the value of the artist will drop. It's obvious, but it will become also a niche that real people work on stuff, and we will be welcomed by new artistic approach.
Right. So
I think it will evolve.
Yeah, so
new things.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. There's a little delay, so I apologize. I thought you'd finished.
Yeah, same. Okay.
No, so I think what you're trying to say is that, like, the artist itself, like, so you'll still have composers, you'll still have artists, but like the working composers will go away. So like, we won't have working artists. Like, you won't be able to get a job as a 3D artist. You won't be able to get a job as a composer. You can still be a 3D artist and do 3D art as an art piece, and people will still appreciate. You can still write a piece of music without AI, and people will appreciate you as a composer and an artist. But the future just won't have working artists. Perhaps is that sort of where you were going with that? So like the job, you won't be able to work for someone else as a composer. You won't be able to work for someone else as a 3D artist. So the industry, the working creative industry won't value artists, but you think society still will. Society won't move away from valuing, like, I don't know, like a solo singer, or like a painter, or, you know, like those won't go away.
I think it's already happening, like, in a little bit scale, because as me wanna be composer, like many people, I believe, when you start from the bottom, you can see that money is value, and even big companies want to save money.
Right.
And people who are not in the job, people who are not in the industry, don't really look at those things. And I think it will just become more weird and weird. The communities will create, and people will work with certain people only because of like history, I guess, and because of the culture, because what they grew up with, because this is a really important thing, that what we grow up with, I think.
Right.
So this will be like really interesting to see how the music will become in 2030s, who will boom, who will go down, and also who will go for the AI, because we still don't know if big companies or small companies will go for AI, because people are also greedy, and we must remember that people above artists and creators have the money to pay us.
Right.
And this is their decision, actually, to tell us who will have the work or not, and if the AI will advance. And this is also, this is really wide topic, actually, now I talk.
It's a very big topic. But anyway, I'm going to have to move on. Thank you so much, Miranda, for calling in and waiting to be called back in. Is there anything you'd like to say to chat room before we move on?
I don't know. Everybody's saying don't be a dick.
There we go. Don't be a dick.
For some reason.
There we go. Thank you so much. Oh, I sorry, I dropped the call then. But thank you so much, Mirando, for calling in. Huge clappers in the chat. Right. So like a few solid points there. Humanity, the humanity of being an artist, we will always value. I mean, it's one of those things. It's what do we value? Perhaps we will splinter. Perhaps there'll be two different schools of artistry. Perhaps it won't just be one replaces the other. Perhaps we have a system of artistry that values the individual person that does not use AI. We value the people for their humanity. And we also value those who value artistic intent. That's the way it's going to go, I think. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm hearing the debate, the more I'm starting to lean towards we will still value artistic craft. We will still value the person, the 8-year-old who can draw like a human-like face with chalk on a road. We will always value that degree of artistry, that human artistic craft. We will always value that, I think. Someone who can play an instrument particularly well, we will value it because we understand as humans how difficult that is. The only problem is that last sentence is the crux of it, because they know how hard it is. When AI gets to a point where someone can do something, like they want to play a guitar, all they have to do is do that and play a single string and just move up and down, it plays it for them. Perhaps that changes, I don't know. But when people don't believe that what you're doing is difficult to do, I don't think they value it as hard. Like, I've definitely had that. It's like, it's the same as when you use like a loop or a phrase in a piece of music and another composer calls you out for it. What they're doing there is showing a disrespect for you. They don't respect the fact that you used something that you didn't create yourself. That's what that is. That's them expressing that disrespect of you. They don't respect your decision to do that. And so we already do it to a degree. But will that carry on? And will that move over to the social fabric when normal people who are not composers, when they can write music themselves? I mean, right now they can, but it's GarageBand. You still have to learn to a degree how to write music. But when they can write music that they like to listen to, will they still value us? Will they value other people? Because then that sentence, because it's something they couldn't do themselves, all of a sudden that becomes an issue. Because if they can do it themselves, why would they care that you could do it? Why would they care about your version of it when they can make the exact thing that they want themselves at home? Where is the value of that? And that's what I mean when I talk about a creator. Because I feel like whilst a regular person who is not an artist may dabble, they may create things themselves, like I want some clip art for my website. I want, some music to listen to while I'm cleaning up. Whilst they can do things like this themselves, I don't feel like people who are not already pursuing artistic endeavors, I don't feel like are artistic people. They just don't have that desire to create. They don't have that desire, that burning need to make. And when I talk about it, it's like I said earlier, when I hear people talk about that burning need to write music and things, I never had that specifically for music. I had that for making things, right? I feel like those people will be the people we value as the entertainers. They will be the people we value as the creators, because they are the people that are showing a dedication to artistic intent. They're saying, I have the ability to utilize all of these tools that everybody has access to. Everybody can make a cool looking movie. Everybody can make a cool piece of music, but not everybody can combine them together in an artistic way. And I think I can. Like, I think that's what a creator mindset will be. And I think those will be the people that make it through. So let me pull in the next caller. So I'm going to pull in Felix. Felix, you are live on the stream. Can you hear me? Hello. Felix, you are live on the stream. Hopefully you've heard some of the points I've put forward so far, so I don't have to load your comments too far. But the future of artist versus creator, the mic is yours.
I just wanted to say long-time listener, first-time caller. I think something worth saying in this chat is that it's quite a biased self-selecting sample.
Of course.
So we're going to be obviously valuing artistic intent more because we appreciate the effort, as you were talking about.
Right.
But I think something to say is the semantics behind the word art. That was my first thought when we spoke about artist versus creator. Like, is an artwork created by an AI still art? So like, something I was thinking about when you were just talking to the last person is, what's your favorite song? I mean, I don't know, it could be anything.
Right.
What if you suddenly found out it's made by AI already?
Right.
Like, you've been listening to it and you love the song, it's your favorite song, you play it all the time, and now today you found out it's made by AI. Does it suddenly lose value to you? Do you suddenly hate the song, or do you like it more, or does it lose part of its value? And like, I think our response to that might indicate a lot our stance towards AI and the future.
Right. And it depends who you ask as well, of course. Like if you ask society in general, if they value the composer or just music, and they say music, you know what I mean? I feel like composers would have a very different opinion on the subject.
And I think, well, maybe we could try and look at it at a kind of more objective place then, that we don't have to talk about, you know, people that are in the chat that are composers and people that aren't.
Okay.
You can maybe say aesthetic value, like objective aesthetic value.
Sure.
Like, aesthetic value literally just means like eliciting pleasure. It doesn't have to be like that. That's its definition, I think, in English. I don't know. I'm not a dictionary, but something like it elicits value. Elicits pleasure. So value, I think, therefore can exist regardless of its creator, AI or not. So the aesthetic value that an AI can give to an artwork or a piece of music, a piece of art that it paints, whatever, that exists regardless of, you know, if it's AI or not. The intent, therefore, isn't really relevant. And so in our world, if we're all composers, or most of us probably, if we're talking about scoring to a film or something like that, if an AI can elicit pleasure from you in a scene because it knows when to bring the strings in because it sees something on screen or something like that, then it's still it's giving value to that moment. It's creating pleasure, and it's making you think, wow, this is really emotive. You know, it elicits emotion, and so there's value there regardless of the creator.
But the creator isn't valuable. That's the point. Sorry, the artist in that scenario isn't valuable, because if the director is the person who can make the music themselves at that point, they're using an AI to bring the music in. The artist is then irrelevant, because that director is then playing the role of a creator, because they're not making that music themselves. That's the point I'm saying. It's like the value of the artist goes away when the director can make the music himself. So therefore, we no longer value the artistry of it. However, like, the end result still matters, because if that director makes the exact same movie that it would have been had he had a composer, then we're valuing his art as artistic intent, not artistic craft. We don't care how it was made. We only care that it was made, right? But it still took that human making the decision. So I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just to latch on to the point you were just making there, and to point out a loophole which may have been bad, to, you know, a difficult one to crawl back to. It's that, yes, I understand that the AI, if it evokes the correct emotion out of a person, it doesn't matter. Like, it's doing its job. But the point is that in that regard, an artist, a person who does that, is irrelevant now, because they're in this scenario, they don't even need to exist. Only the director or the person making the movie needs like needs the AI. So the concept of the artist has gone away, of the artistic, like physical artistic doing the work, the artistic craft is irrelevant, is what we're saying in that scenario, right?
I am saying that, and I to be honest, I do actually agree that is happening, and that is it. That's the reality of it. That's the truth. And I think the future is going that way. Like, it will. I'm not gonna. I mean, most people that I've heard so far have kind of been saying there's still kind of value to a human making it, and whatever. But I think honestly it's going that way, and I don't know, it sounds a bit doomsday-y.
Yeah, I absolutely. But that's what I'm saying. You're making the absolute correct point. It is contextual. Like, obviously the people who will feel the pain of it first will be the creators, and the general public won't even know that we're battling with it. You know what I mean? They'll just keep getting great end results. The problem's going to be when they can do it themselves, when anyone can do it, when being an artist isn't a thing, when it isn't impressive, when it's not valuable, when anybody goes, I could have made that. But
that's only a problem to you, though. Like, I don't think it's a problem.
It's a problem to artists. It's a problem to artists. That's the point.
But the way, I mean, you touched on it a few callers ago, technology exists to make our lives more efficient and more bearable, whatever. I think inevitably then, inexorably, the march of technology is going towards making music like anyone can make it. And 100 years ago, nobody had a computer. They couldn't do what we do. I can't play an instrument, but I can still make music. And so in 100 and other years, anybody can make music without even a computer. I don't know,
Which means that the concept of a composer has zero value. Zero.
Yes.
Right, exactly. And that's what I mean. So, but I think there will still be value as a creator. I feel like everybody will be able to write music, and everybody will be able to make a video game, and everybody will be able to make a movie, but nobody will be doing all of them as a unified artistic vision. You know what I mean? I feel like that's what a creator is going to be. I feel like the people who have that burning need to create will adapt and become creators. But it makes me fear for the artist. And that's why I'm having this topic today, is because I still see a lot of people going to 4-year music courses. And I worry that in 4 years, the composer as a concept might not even mean the same thing it does by the time they finish. You know what I mean?
Well, if they're going into it thinking, I want to compose for this film that's coming out in 4 years, then they're going to be disappointed. But I mean, I think a lot of people go into music because they like music.
Oh no, absolutely. Absolutely, but that's what I'm saying. That's the problem. That's the fear of the future. That, in fact, that's the big question of the future. It's like they go into it because they love music, but the brutal reality is that they're going into a field which isn't going to exist, I don't think, for much longer. Do you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it will. It's. I mentioned it in the chat earlier on. It's like in London, the situation between Uber drivers and black cab drivers.
Yeah.
Like the black cab drivers had to do the knowledge test, where they know every street in London off the back of their hand. That's insane to me, and I feel really sorry for them.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Uber technology has come along and usurped that throne.
GPS.
They're now being put out of existence, and that's just the way it goes. And the same thing will happen to musicians that don't realize that the technology is changing, and it will, it'll force them to adapt, and that's just the way it will happen.
And genuinely, that's the reason I want to get this call going now, because it is imperative that people start looking. If you want to be a creator in the future, you can't just be one field. I feel like you can't. If you're not already making your own album artwork, if you're not already making your own music videos, if you're not looking at trying to do that yourself already, your mind isn't in the right place for the future, I feel. Do you agree with that sentiment? You should at least be looking to do that already.
Oh, I mean, for sure. Unless you're just making music because it's fun.
Because of course, if you're doing it as a hobby. When I talk about artist versus creator, I'm talking about people who are dedicating their lives. I'm not talking about people that are I just want to do a cool song for my friends. That person isn't being replaced by AI. That person doesn't give a fuck. But I'm talking about the people whose lives are dedicated to the artistry of creation. And that's what we do. That's how I earn my money. I make shit for a living. That is my value to society. But I understand that my value to society, as it was historically known, is completely coming to a grinding halt. So what is the future, and where do we fit in? And that's what I talk about, the future of the artist versus the creator. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you think conceivably then this is getting bit abstract.
Load that question. Load
if-
it. I'm ready.
If we keep going on this route towards the future, every industry is going to have this question, right? Everything is going to be usurped by technology. You know,
Absolutely,
like in car manufacturing, everything's being done by robots now. There are no people on the assembly lines, all that stuff. You know, it's eventually everything will be done by technology. Driving, no chauffeurs are needed anymore, no drivers. You know, whatever, planes automatically driven as well. Like everything eventually will be done by technology, and like medicine, things like that. So eventually, the only job to exist will be maintenance crew and research and development, like the people that do the actual technology creation. So this is now becoming a discussion.
But of course, then you're looking at what is
and
society at that point? What do humans do? Like it will return. If humans don't have to work, what would they do if they were given complete freedom? Most people don't know the answer to that question, but I feel like most humans will probably make shit. They will probably make their own little things. And that's what I was talking about as society. You know, before the social media, we were like countries. We knew each other on country levels. Now we have social media. We're in our own little social bubbles. And then in the future, when you can make music, you can get food delivered, you don't have to drive anywhere, you don't have to work. You know what I mean? It'll be about making everything for yourself. So the future goes to individualism. But I do feel like humans are programmed to be social. So somewhere along that line, I feel like there will be a pushback against that. But I feel like that is where the creator fits neatly in, because they are the balance of humanity meets technology. Do you know what I mean? I feel like every industry will probably find their version of the creator. So it won't be about technology taking everything. It'll be about those people who have the ability to combine all of the technologies into a new field, and that is what we will call art. You know what I mean? Because art won't be being able to write music or make a pretty picture anymore, because everybody can do it. That's not artistic anymore. Artistry will be the people who can take all of that technology and do something we don't even know what it is yet. You know what I mean? Because like now we are still debating over things that already exist. Like who knows, when AI comes along, new forms of what music actually even means might exist. Perhaps music has a smell element in the future. Who knows? You know what I mean? Like we don't know. But we don't know where it's going, but we know. Sorry. Yeah, we don't know where it's going, but we know that it ends up with us not having a job as an artist, right? We don't know where it's going, but we know how it ends up with us not having a job. Right. So I can't tell you the path and where to dedicate your time, but we can all see that the future doesn't include the artist as a valued person of society, or at least a devalued person of society. Because if you can make something, why would you value someone else doing the exact same thing? Because everybody is a selfish narcissist to a degree. Like if you see someone else make something and you've made something which you think is better, you don't value the other person's thing. It's just human nature. But anyway, like you were saying, it does come down to context. But just, I want to roll it back a bit. So do you think education systems, because this is the point we were talking about at the beginning of our discussion, was like, you know, students, you know, going 4 years in or something. Do you think that perhaps the education system for all things should be reducing the amount of time they dedicate to the craft and more time dedicated to the answering the artistic intent question? How do you feel about that? The education system. How should we be educating creators?
I think an important thing is how you create creative ideas. So it's not necessarily like teaching someone, oh, this is a middle C, and how you build a chord off it, or whatever. It's more important to learn how to be inquisitive and know. Like what you could develop into if you approach music from a more kind of, standoffish point of, you don't need to know the theory to still enjoy music and things like that. So maybe there's an educational, I can only really talk from my own perspective.
We all can,
I didn't I didn't do A levels because my school's wanky and they tried to be different. Did the international baccalaureate instead. And so I did a thing called theory of knowledge. It's like a half subject that you did. And it wasn't like it wasn't really a subject where it's like you have like a maths answer where it's like 1 + 1 is 2. It was more of like why do you, how do you learn, and why do you learn, and
right. And I absolutely agree with you. But like you're actually, I don't know if you realize it, but you're fully re-emphasizing the point. It's like on the education system. I mean, is that like the education system is already outdated. I mean, like I didn't have the grades to get into music school. Like I didn't even, like I got rejected. Like I couldn't even go to music school, yet I still succeeded, which means I didn't need the music school in order to do the job that people are going to the school to do. So it's already outdated if someone who didn't have the ability, like the quality to get in, can still succeed without it. How is it going to survive and be any way relevant when the craft of it can be done by a 5-year-old? You know, like they need to adapt to the future.
Education's way behind already. Like I wish I'd been taught coding as a child. Like I wish that they had had the foresight to, get us already learning about like, software development and things like that as a school kid. That's just
woefully behind the times.
Yeah, it's inadequacy of
like
I don't know
school
about other countries, but
education needs to start planning its curriculum for the future, not the present. Like, yes, what they're teaching is great for right now, but it's useless for 4 years. Like, we're in an exponential technological growth, which means even a year sometimes is not, you know what I mean? You could do a year course in Contact and be completely outdated, you know what I mean, by the time you finish. So, like, there was a sound design, like what was it? Think Space Education. They did an interview with me at the end, and I think I'm talking about sound design concept or something. And I'm thinking, like, if I'm giving advice from 2016 about sound design, it's already completely out of date and not even remotely close to how I do it now, because things move so quickly. But anyway, I just realized I'm going to have to move on to the next caller. We've had a nice long discussion, but thank you so much, Felix, for calling in. Anything you would like to say to the chat room before we move on?
That was fun. I did have a question. I don't think he's in the chat anymore, but for Rich, when is he going to make something that's not cyberpunk? But that's what I have to say.
Oh, okay. The burn. Thank you so much. Huge clappers in the chat for Felix. Rich, when are you going to write something that isn't that cyberpunk shit, for Christ's sake? But anyways, again, more interesting and more deeper conversation has emerged. How is society going to accept the artist? Do they already, is the education system already failing artists today? Because if the artist doesn't exist, if they're already irrelevant where people can succeed without even going to them, why are they still relevant? Why do people still go if you don't need them? These are the things that society are going to have to deal with. But let's bring in a new caller. Let's bring in Dove. Dove Goes West. You are now live on the stream. Mic fixed? Can you hear me? I'm not hearing anything. Let me try turning him up. He says his mic's fixed, but I can't hear him, which makes me worry. Okay, I'll give you 5 more seconds, Dove, to speak, and then I'm going to have to move on. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I apologize, Dove. Your mic wasn't working for me, mate. Maybe go and have a little look at that and fix it. Right, so who's next? We've got the Metal Daniel. The Metal Daniel, you are live on the stream. Hello. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yeah,
I can hear you. Yes, welcome to the stream. So, hopefully you've heard what I've said so far, so I won't load your statement too heavily, but the mic is yours.
So I feel like there's going to be phases of AI. It's not just going to move in one direction and just stay there forever.
Okay.
Because right now we already sort of like devalue artistry in music. We already accept using samples, auto-tune. We're already willing to devalue artistry just to make something better. And I think AI is just going to be like moving the needle all the way towards creator. And there's going to be a time where AI art just becomes totally saturated and does replace artistry.
Right.
But I think eventually, like the non-artistry of it is going to be sort of like, people aren't just going to like have a connection to it anymore. And it's going to be sort of akin to like what somebody was saying about vinyl. It went out of style, but it just came back for some reason, even if it's completely unfinancially viable and technically inferior and inefficient.
So you're saying there'll be waves of humanity. So like we will all move towards AI, but then we'll get sick of AI and move towards humanity, and then we'll get sick of humanity and move towards AI, like that, perhaps.
Exactly. I think it's going to be, it just depends on what people feel a connection to and what society values. And I think eventually probably AI is just going to become like its own genre, like AI art and AI games and all these things are just going to become their own genre of themselves.
But how does that work in a world where we have AI but with intent? So like I could get an AI and make exactly what I wanted to make. It's exactly what I would have made by hand, but the AI did exactly what I intended to do, but it was made by AI. Would that still be put in the AI genre, even though the intent didn't change?
Well, I guess it just depends on if the artistry of it has AI. Like if you're, sorry, I don't mean artistry of it. The creation of it involves AI. I think people will consider that as AI art.
Right.
And that being able to do things like the idea of it's so hard, and that's why art is appealing. That is going to come back at some point.
Right. So, but okay, to play devil's advocate and to use someone's previous example, what if, for example, like you found out your favorite song was made by an AI after the fact? So you already value it, you already like it as a piece of music. Then you find out it's done by an AI. Would you then move it over to the AI category and think about it differently?
That's a good question, because I think I think honestly, if people knew about that, would it still be your favorite song? Is a good question to even ask yourself.
So will AI become like a dirty secret, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be sort of like,
so
it's like, are you going to look down on people for using AI eventually?
Right. So creation will be become, I think, perhaps, well, according to the logic you're putting forward, a more secretive process. Like people will only put out their end results. Like, I'm not going to tell you which bits I made myself, which bits are AI, but here is my artistic intent. So you feel like in the future, perhaps knowing how the sausage is made will be how we devalue people. So people will stop explaining how they make their art?
Maybe. I mean, like if you look at like the pop music industry, like a lot of the appeal of it is not actually even just the music. Like it's a lot of exploiting the artists themselves. So it's not just the art that matters at that point.
Yeah. It's
package. Also the people who are involved in it.
Right. But but that's where the question comes in. So in the future, when everybody has the ability to make it, you think there will still be artists, but like just the beautiful people will continue to be popular and like they will be the creators. You know what I mean?
Exactly,
but it'll be a team of actual people doing it for them, but they'll call themselves a creator. And then the beautiful people will be beautiful and rule the world as they always do. And then us minions will just be like, yes, master.
Yes, exactly.
Here is your content. So, I mean, that is absolutely a possibility. And again, it all depends. Like, and that's the thing we always keep saying is like, we always debate what art is, but I don't think, like, based on what you're saying, I don't think it's ever stable. Like in the past, art meant artistic craft, the people who could do the thing. And I think we will still have and value art, but it won't be the people. It won't be about being able to do it anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like the word art will move from the ability to do to the intent to do. Because like everybody keeps saying, like AI is going to replace it. But again, the AI is not going to come up. The AI can only come up with an idea based on things that already exist. That's how AI works. It listens to how things go. And then it's like, well, when we get to this point, usually people do stuff like this. That's basically what AI does. In this situation, it usually goes in this direction. Therefore, I will present it as if it went that direction. And that's like how you can morph through human faces. It's like if the nose was to be bigger, it would look like this, you know, and then it just presents it to you. So, I mean, it's one of those things. But yeah, anyway, so as I was trying to say, in the future, when everybody can do it and we don't value the artist anymore, and then so now the artists are working for the creators. But you see the future as a creator future. So we will have the people in society will still be the same famous people, but now they will just be like, instead of who's like a famous, but instead of Billie Eilish only doing music, Billie Eilish will now be a movie director. She will be a creator. There will be Billie Eilish movies, Billie Eilish video games, and you know what I mean? Like she will be able to create her own. So it will be about brands in the future, you think? It'll be about individual people and their thing. Well, as a creator, that's what I'm calling a creator, is the person who does everything. And then we will value the people who can do that best, or who have the best creator teams, perhaps. So like Chris Nolan, instead of just giving up and saying, fuck it, he will then, he'll adapt and make the Chris Nolan music and the Chris Nolan video games, and they will all tie into each other. So do you see the future in that kind of world then?
Well, I always think it's going to change. I think it's never just going to go to one point and just stay like, oh, it's always going to be a creator future.
Of course.
I think it's always going to be moving back and forth between creator and artistry.
Well, I mean, like that's the point we're not talking about, which you just brought up, which is a perfect point, is that like when we move to the creator future, technology's not going to stop. So there will be a point, like, and here's what I'm saying is like, there won't be a black and white, like it's artist, now it's creator. That's never going to happen. It's going to be a gradual shift that's already started. Like the shift started when the computer came around, like, and we didn't need to write music down. Like the shift to the creator model has already started. And you can tell that because people already make their own art for their albums. You can tell that because people already make their own music videos with their own teams. Like that is the shift. Like the fact that you get like creators like Corridor Digital or Film Riot, like these small individual indie people who are making, like competing with like Hollywood level stuff in their creations. That is the move towards the creator. It's just the individual artists over time are slowly going to start dropping off. Luckily, I feel like music is going to be one of the last to go. But and again, I said it to the last call, the reason I'm bringing it up now is this is now the point where you should be looking. If you are an individual artist, if you are an artist that focuses on an individual topic, you need to start looking at the writing on the wall and realize that eventually your value will go away, but not your value as a creator. If you're an artist, you can still make things, but you need to start looking out and realizing that you can choose not to engage in being a creator, but everybody else will. So you'll be competing with people who have got it, in your eyes, they're cheating. But if society accepts them cheating, then they are the artists and you're just a bitter person who's out of date. Like people who still use sheet music. You know what I mean? Exactly. People who still write their music on sheet music. Those people still exist. And a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are bitter about the people who use computers to write music. They're not real composers, but the general public society values composers who write music on computers. We're considered artists. So it's irrelevant what that artist thought about their position. Our value is determined by our external sources. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're an artist. If no one says you're an artist, it's hard to sort of prove, just because you're Sorry, I realized I went on another rant instead of asking a question. So how do you think we fix the situation? How do you think, well, not fix, how do you think the best way is going to be to introduce artists to becoming creators? Where do you think they start? If you believe that that's where the future's going, like what should they be doing?
I don't know if it's something you can teach. I think it's just something inherent that people feel like they have to, like they want to do this. Like if people are artists themselves, they will want to create regardless of what the art is.
Right. But what about, for example, like let's say that you're a composer, you only love music, right? You love to create and you only love to create music. You are now competing against people. So let's say that, for example, you release a song. And by the way, I'm not saying that that's wrong. Like I understand why people want the artistry, but let's say that you release a song, and I used this example earlier, and the song comes out and it's, you put it out on Spotify or whatever. But then I make a song, but alongside that song, I also have a fully created video game that explains the full concept of the album I'm doing and includes the music in it, as well as a movie and a novel, all of which I used AI to create. But you can see how that would be a difficult thing to compete, because no one's buying these things, but it's going to be a difficult thing to compete for that amount of time if all you offer is the one thing. Sure, it has complete human artistic value, but does it have societal value? Like that's the problem. That's what's going away, is the societal value of artistry, of the physicality of doing the art, I mean, but But how do they like the way I try to explain it? So to load your answer for you is that like the way I feel like is that education. We need to teach people the why they do things. Why do you light a scene? Why do you change the eye patch to purple? Why does it do that? That's what people should be focusing on, don't you think?
Yeah, I guess so. But it's hard to do if you're not in like an inherently creative person. It might never make sense to you. In other words.
Right, and that's what I meant. That, like, I don't think creation is ever going to go away because, like, there are people that could, like, everybody in the world could be an artist right now, and with the tools we have, probably be relatively successful if they really tried. Like, there's nothing stopping, but they just choose not to because, either they don't value their own skills. And I feel like given the AI tools, like like Artbreeder, most people will dabble and be like, hey, I can create the thing, but they won't actually make the thing. But in doing the creation themselves and realizing how easy it is to do, in their brains, they devalue the fact that you can also do it, right? So that's what I mean. It's like the artist won't go away, but people won't value or respect it as highly because they can do the individual elements of it themselves. So the creator future is the concept of being able to combine all the things together. And don't you think it's about time that like school started teaching that kind of thing? Like this is why you score a scene this way, as opposed to you put strings here, put strings there, put brass there. Like the craft is no longer as relevant, don't you think?
I mean, yeah, I guess I wish I could have had that when I was in school.
You wish you could have it when you were in school. What do you feel like kids who are going into school now should be bringing this up with their teachers, perhaps?
Probably, but I'm guessing a lot of their teachers are traditional type, like they just follow the curriculum and just do that.
So do you think education's outdated?
You either sing or you play an instrument, and that's it.
Right. So do you think the education system is just outdated? Do you think it's worth going to though? Like it's a tough thing to contend with.
Yeah, I think it is actually because I never really remembered the music education being creatively oriented. It was mostly just like practical. You practice an instrument, you play the music, and then that's it. It's never really like creatively oriented at all.
Yeah. It's funny talking to you guys. It's made me believe more that we will probably break into two things. We will probably have a respect for the artistic craft, like you were saying, you know what I mean? Like we'll value people doing it for humanity's sake. Like we'll always value the kid playing guitar really well. You know what I mean? Like that will always impress us. That will always be something we value. But I don't think that there will also be, I just think it's the working artists that are going away, really. Don't you think? Like the people with jobs. It's the jobs that are going away, other than creator. But anyway, sorry, I keep phrasing yes or no questions to you, which is very hard to answer, but I do need to move on now. So I apologize for that. But thank you so much for calling in. Is there anything you'd like to say to the chat before we leave?
Be a gentleman.
Be a gentleman. So thank you, the Metal Daniel. I appreciate that so much. So we've covered a lot of the topics now. Now we're treading ground. So I'm going to go through the callers, but the callers are going to be a little bit short now because we've covered a lot of the main talking points that I wanted to cover. So here we go. So let's find the next caller. Wait, how do we pronounce this? Wait, was that Orchestronic? Is that what it is? Orchestronic? You are live on the stream. Can you hear me?
That's right.
That's right, Orchestronic. So the future of artist versus creator. How do you see the future going? Tell us your opinion. Mike is yours.
Gotcha. Yeah, sorry, I was a little busy at work, so I didn't catch most of the conversation. But
it's fine. Just tell us how you feel.
Right. Gathering my thoughts. Starting, I generally believe that with AI, it is fundamentally impossible for them to replace humans. Now, in what capacity, it'll change depending on the company and just because there are different nuances, as you might imagine. You know, you've got different companies, and yes, hiring or using AI will likely be the less risky option. And I think because of that, it will be a method that's often employed by companies, especially by stakeholders, for major companies like Square Enix, because, or other ones, you know, not to point fingers like, oh, you know, they bow to the stakeholders, but essentially what I'm saying is that those companies will likely go with those because it will mitigate risk. But the very premise of the human composer is to take risk, because I don't believe that you can replace the intention of a composer, because the thing that makes one an individual, per se, the difference between Hans Zimmer or, just a random example, I'm not a huge fan, but Hans Zimmer or, Koji Kondo, whatever, Joe Hisaishi for Studio Ghibli, what is it that distinguishes them from your common composer? And I think the answer is simply their intention. I like to describe it as the uncommon aesthetic.
It's a good way of putting it,
yeah, where every composer that really makes it out there have that impression. Like you can kind of tell when you hear Joe Hisaishi's work or you hear a given artist. How do you tell, oh, that's their work? And it's that uncommon element that, few other people would add. And I feel like that's a personal thing. And by that premise, I don't believe that composers would just simply get replaced, because that human element, which it's irreplaceable.
So like on your point there, so like I think I get what you're saying. So it's like the value of Hans Zimmer isn't that like an AI could have done the Interstellar score and used the organ, but it's the fact he chose the organ in the first place and the arpeggio on it is what made that artistic, is what made that work. Is that what you're saying? It's like it requires that human to make the uncommon directional decision in order to keep it feeling human. Is that kind of the road you're going down there?
Kind of. To better describe it, I would say that it has to do with, it's a choice.
Right.
There is, when it comes to composing, like getting into whether an AI or a human would be better is like saying, in essence, that all it comes down to is skill. That is 100% of the factor that separates, your most successful composers from the ones that don't make it as much, inherently that don't write good music. And
so they're just better at it.
What's that?
So you're saying they're just better at it?
Yes, but I feel like they're only better because they've honed in over the years. They've learned enough material, just like an AI would. It's going to learn, right? They've learned enough material that it's become an integral part of them. But it's only by learning that material that eventually you just you get to the point where you gain this, that one thing that you like to do in the piece, that identifiable characteristic. It could be anything, that you can just tell, like, oh, that's so good. I can't really describe it.
It's called they call it the X factor. I mean, like that generally that's known as like an X factor. It's something indistinguishable that for some reason makes that thing or that person more appealing than seemingly it either should be or like it feels like it is, That's what you don't quite get why it's so good. But the problem is how does the X factor exist at all when everybody can create whatever they have in their mind by moving sliders,
Well, like I said, it's completely unique to each person. I do believe that every single person on the planet, if they were to really discover themselves and find what makes them as a composer, they'd have a different sound. Now, it might sound very similar to a lot of other things, but there'd be this one thing that people would specifically go to them for. Because, a common discussion nowadays is, people that, the fact that everything will maybe sound the same. Because, there are many common genres of music. There are going to be many people, many successful composers that will sound similar and use similar chord progressions. But what sets them apart? By that definition, all the different YouTube arrangers and whatnot would there'd be no reason to go into these different pianists who do covers of the same tunes because they're all the same, right? But no, it's a different brand. Like people will have opinions like, no, like they do this better, but what makes that objective difference? And I believe it's that one thing that's personal, and that's the hurdle. I believe that what will happen eventually is that it will shift focus. Because nowadays, I feel like a lot of composers, and this is how they end up in the trap that they get, where they don't write music that hits, that compels.
Right,
you know,
but if we're thinking about a technological future, because we're talking about creators, so we're at a point where creators exist. Like you will have the artist, like you say, you'll have the artist who has the uncommon aesthetic, the someone who creates the thing. But then what? Like we already see it now. Once something gets popular, everybody just replicates it. Like once someone has created something artistic, it like the amount of time that is valuable is going to be so insignificant, I feel like, in the future. So you'll have the person that makes a piece of music that sounds cool and original, but will have the technology that within probably hours of hearing it, you'll have 1,000 copies of things that do the same idea and everybody putting their own little spin on it, which is the point I'm kind of making, is that like when you have AI that can create content at a level humans just biologically can't do, is the amount of time that something's valuable is so negligible that you can't even really distinguish that person who was the artist from the copycat. Do you see what I'm saying? So like we're going to get to a point where that it's there's no point making something original, because if you do, everybody's going to copy. And that's why I'm saying that like I agree that we'll still have the creative people, but they're not going to be the successful people anymore. I feel like the people with the creative ideas will probably get copied the most, but like they'll probably have an impact, but they won't get the recognition for it because the value of what they do won't be held, because people will just hear it and they'll be so used to hearing copies of other copies that they'll just assume that the original thing is a copy of something they haven't already heard yet. Do you see what I'm saying? They won't be able to distinguish something original from the thousands of copies that are going to follow it almost immediately if it's good. I mean, look at Blinding Lights and how we had 1,000 Blinding Lights copies immediately afterwards. And that was within like weeks of it coming out. When we have AI, it will be like the second someone hears it and goes, oh, that's cool, they're going to turn to their AI and go, AI, I like this. Let's incorporate that into my thing. And it won't feel original. So you'll need that creator. Like, that's why I keep saying the creator. And of course, the creator will be replaced by an AI creator eventually. But obviously, that's going to be longer than taking away all the elements. But don't you think that, like, perhaps even though with all the best wishes and hopes and intents, like, there's just no future for the artist?
Well, that's exactly the thing. It's a copy. I mean, and you know, it's common wisdom. I don't know if people hear this a lot, but for me, it's commonplace that honestly, if you strive to be like something,
right,
then you're going to be the second best version of it. Like, you have to pursue your own thing. And by that premise, by what makes that identifiable characteristic, that difference between, you know, Joe Hisaishi and every other composer that tries to tailor after him, or just any common example, doesn't matter. But the point is, that's the angle that I approach this at, because it's like, yes, there's the tech side of it, there's the, but eventually.
But that's my point. When you can't distinguish the copycat from the original, like when the saturation point is so intense, because that's what it will be when everybody can write music themselves. Because it's already intense now, and not everybody can write music. It's like but it's not hard to write music, so it's already. But when it's saturated to the point where everybody can write music, there's going to be zero. There's going to be zero value there. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, I'm seeing now. So you're basically talking about accessibility. You know, composers, skill will be less of a thing, a craft.
It'll be
so what you're
non-existent.
saying, sorry?
Yeah. There'll be no because so you're saying the value is being original, right? But what I'm saying is when people have the ability to create music so quickly and easily, when someone creates something amazing that's original, it's going to be copied so quickly and at such a volume that people won't be able to distinguish where the original came from or who made it or where it is, because there'll be so much saturation. They're more likely to hear the copycats. Think about it, if there's one original and a million copycats, if you throw a dart at a wall, you're going to hit a copycat. So people are more likely to hit the copycat before they find the original, which means there's zero value for the artist to be original. There's no reason for them to be original because that originality will be saturated within minutes because of the technology allowing it to do so. So what I'm saying is the value will be in the thing that not everybody can do. So there will be the concept of an artist won't exist, I don't think, because everybody can be an artist. So we'll either change the word or the meaning of the word artist to what I'm calling a creator, which will be the people who can utilize the tools that everybody has access to create an artistic vision that they couldn't think up. Do you see what I'm saying? So where you have to utilize all the elements of creation to create the meta creation. And that's what a creator will be. The person, the people, the artist who can make a singular vision utilizing all aspects of creation, right?
Yeah, no, actually, I get fully what you're trying to say now. So basically, it has to do with, they're just going to be a sheer amount of extra copies of one thing. Well, it makes sense. I just think that the thing is with the music is that, there will always be. That's right. Sorry, I was getting back on my point. Basically, I think that, I kind of asked the question, what's the difference between that now and that in 50 years?
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, we're going to have more. But here's the thing. It's a common and very real issue that people deal with already. The idea that you're sitting there and you're really like that identity crisis, when you're writing music and you sound like a lot of other people. It's like that still occurs, by that same, you could ask that question now. It's like, what's the point? I'm just going to be a copy. There's already so much of the same thing. It's the same chord progression. I get this feeling. I've analyzed so much music that I've basically stilted myself when it comes to composing, and I have to kind of work back up. But that's the thing. So it's like,
go on. Sorry.
No, I was just going to finish up. Like, if the question is still there, it's, why do you compose at all? Why do you contribute art? What is the point? And I think that is going to be the question that people will have to ask more often.
So the human element of art will change away from the being able to do it to the story behind why you're doing it or why you've chosen to create a piece. Will be that I in fact, that's a good way of looking at it, which I didn't think of. We will change the sort of understanding of what the artistry part is. It's like, because it's not about right now, artistry is the being able to do it, right? Like, I have a concept, I want to express an emotion, and I have the ability to do it, right? So everybody will be able to do that. And so that won't be the artist. People won't care about that part of the humanity anymore. Then they'll probably, I think what you're saying is they'll shift over to the parts that aren't necessarily about the music, but give the music a deeper context or a human context. So the future of artistry will be about contextualizing what we write, not about the actual thing we write.
Kind of, yeah. I'm trying to translate what you're saying because I have very different ways of thinking about this. But basically,
there is no right answer, by the way. Like, I'm not proclaiming to know what the future is going to be like. I'm just saying how I feel. So, like, if I interrupt you and say something different, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just putting across the point for the sake of debate. But sorry, continue.
No, absolutely. I appreciate it. Honestly, it's good to hear your perspective too. But honestly, when it comes to that, it's, like I said, the uncommon aesthetic, what is that? What makes the difference? And I think the personal difference between the copy and the real person who wrote the music that got people initially for the title, for the game or the film that they wrote for, is that the personal journey allows you to explore and become and choose that one thing. You know, it could be anything. It's like, okay, you choose this instrument, or it could be this tiny little element like this trill that you put in a specific place that's common.
Right.
You know, most easily accessible example off the top of my head, there's B.B. King. He was a blues master. I'm not a huge fan, but the point is, he used to do this thing at the end of his solos where he'd hit this high note.
Right.
That was distinctly B.B. King, the way he did that. And people recognized it. Now, of course, there were copies, but they were different copies. And the things that weren't different are just cheap imitations. So at that point, it's kind of arguing, well, what is the legitimacy of the music you're creating? What's the point in doing an arrangement of something?
Right.
I mean,
but with your BB King example, but yes, like we look at the other people who do that high note thing and say that's a cheap imitation. But if after, let's say the BB King does that high trumpet note once, right? He does it the first time and someone goes, that's amazing. Within a minute, there's 200,000 imitations of it. You see what I'm saying? It's like all of a sudden we won't be looking at the copies and saying that's just a pale imitation. The problem I'm saying is the future will be like, we don't understand quite yet how dense the saturation will be. But when anybody can write music, when they hear something cool, they will replicate it, and it will happen so densely and so fast that I think the X factor will get drowned in the saturation of copycats. I don't think there's a way to make that X factor stand out if people copy it that way. So the future, I think what I think you're kind of skirting around is that creators will be more like context creators. So like where I am using that high note because, and then you make the whole point of selling that piece of music, explaining why that high note means that. So then when the copies come out, they're following your example of creating the context. And then you get known for creating the context of that high note, regardless of how many people imitate it, right?
Actually, yes. Thank you. No, actually.
Thank you. Yes, actually, no, fuck you.
No, not at all. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's true. But that's the thing about music. Music is a story. When you're writing for something, there's a story. So the story you tell is going to be slightly different. And I feel like there will be copies, but the reason people buy a soundtrack is not for that one thing. It's for the story that it tells. It's like Gareth Coker for Ori and the Blind Forest. His entire soundtrack is geared towards telling a story. And they're going to be different and variants in form. And I think it'll evolve the way people collaborate. Because there will be differences. I just think they might be on a larger scale. It won't be those minor things like, yes, they're going to be carried, they're going to be used often, but eventually, and I think some shows have actually explored this concept, the thing that, at that point, instead of focusing on those minor elements, these small things, it'll shift to what story are you telling with the music?
Right.
What is your story, your perspective?
The artistic intent is the way I describe it. Yes.
Yeah, same.
But that's the debate we keep, the circular logic we keep coming back to. I agree. We come back to the artistic intent, but it's like, but do you still respect the artistic intent if it is achieved by a single button press? Like there's so many, like this is one of those complicated questions that no matter wherever you find an answer, it's like creating a video game. You fix one bug, it'll create 10 more. It's like you figure that out.
Oh yeah.
But like the way you were pitching it there, I really liked. It's sort of like the point of art won't be about the art. It'll be about explaining why it's like it's not context, but it's like we already kind of do it to a point. It's like music has no value as it is already. It's on us as artists to explain its value, to explain its context, to explain why it's worth listening to, and that's just that element won't change. That element will remain the same throughout future. It'll be less about writing the music. It'll be less about being able to do it because everybody can do it, and more about the reasons why you do it and being able to explain that. and provide value to that. And like I say, when you're a creator, you won't be able to just write the music anymore, because you will be competing against the people. If context matters, if you need to be the person who if you create that high trumpet note, if you have that context, that high X factor, you also then have to make sure that part of your artistry is explaining that, firstly, that's your thing that you made for this reason. And in the future, you'll be able to do that because you'll be able to make art, music videos, video games yourself. So that's probably what an artist will be. And the successful artists will be the ones who are able to utilize all of the creative elements to set up the context for the art they actually wanted to make in the first place. So it just means that instead, like how a composer is now also a mix engineer and a arranger and a mastering engineer, we're also becoming more of a marketing department by becoming an entire game development studio or an entire music video creation studio. So is that sort of what you're saying? It's like, we're going to keep being the same. It's just, we're going to keep having to explain ourselves using the tools.
Here's the thing with that, almost, but what I'm saying more, and the question I'd like to pose is, why did we start writing music in the first place?
Right.
Why did music come into existence? Over time, it changed. With the Romantic era, it became more about expressing something and whatnot.
Right. Becomes a very human question, yeah.
But honestly, I feel like our job and the humbling experience that you were talking about when, AI can just do the same thing, and what's the point? It's our job. And the reason you should go into composing, I believe, is because you want to make people feel something.
Right.
You want to communicate a message, because that's the beauty. And I listen to a lot of composers, professional ones that write really great music, and they all say very similar things. Like, the greatest gift is being able to hear someone who told you that they were able to connect with your music. It provided a means for them to have like a healthy space and escape. It could be personal to any person, but that's the thing that makes a human composer really valuable, because it's our experiences, it's that language, that translation. And that's why I honestly believe that will never be less valuable. Now, whether it will change the industry is an entirely different discussion, because if you end up, writing, certain companies, like I said, are going to use composers, are going to use those AI because they are going to be less money than hiring a full-time composer.
For sure.
But I feel like possibly one area that it could end up going in is that indie games will become the future. Maybe. It'll become huge for human composers, because major companies, eventually they outgrow themselves and they end up always becoming so big.
So I was going to say, like, indie people, though, however, are already the group utilizing a lot of the modern technologies already. I do feel like indie creators would be one of the first to jump on AI tools. I feel like if you have an indie creator who's a programming genius and they can do their own art, if they could also do their own music, I think they probably would. Like, that's the problem. Again, with the future is like, you're defining musical value by today's set of standards. Like, we value music because of, and the reasons why we do music and things, like, that's by today's values. You have to remember, in the future, when everybody, and I'm not just talking about people in the industry, when I mean, like, my nan can sit down and go, actually, I want a jazz track, make it a bit more intense, and she's getting the emotional reaction from that. We don't even factor into their mindset. Like, the concept of an artist to do that's what I'm saying. Artists are only valued in society because we can entertain people and give them emotional reactions or escapism, things like that. When the technology can do that to the degree at which they utilize us, and by that I mean some people listen to us just casually, some people listen to music intently. But if like the AI music can already cover all the people who listen to music casually, they will no longer value humans who do that job because they can do it for themselves and it's more appropriate to what they're actively looking for. And that's one of the dangers I feel like we need to, as a society, need to look at, is that things are going to change more drastically than we think. You know, like when people can do things themselves, we become irrelevant because, like, hold no illusion, and I'm very brutal with myself about this, is that as soon as someone can do something for themselves, they will not value the human that used to do it for them at all. And again, it's not because they're selfish. It's just that's how humans are. If they can do, if it's easier, if it's the path of least resistance to get where they want to be, they will take it. But anyway, so I do apologize because I've had you on the call for so long and we do actually need to end the thing. But thank you so much. That was a very insightful conversation. Thank you so much for calling in. Is there anything you would like to say to the chat room before we end?
No, that should be it. I'll wrap it up. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Huge clappers in the chat for the, what is it, Orchestronic. Anyway, we have got a few more callers in the chat room. Unfortunately, we are going to have to end because we're at the, I wanted to have a set length for this, about an hour and a half, and we've actually gone over that for this talk show. But we will be doing a Today show again in the future. We may even do one next week. But thank you so much to everybody who contributed to the conversation today. As you can see, it's a conversation that has no real right or wrong answers. And there's no real way to know which way it's going to go because it all depends on society's sense of value. Like, for all we know, AI could completely replace composers and society hates it. You know, we don't know how society on the whole will react, but as composers, as artists, we can look at the writing on the wall and see, like the phrase is we don't know where this is going, but we know how it ends. And it ends with artists being devalued horribly. So if you go into life understanding that, you won't be disappointed and life won't be as hard, I think, in the future when we do eventually move into a more creator-based as opposed to artist-based system. We may end up changing the meaning of the word artist to be what a creator is. And when I say creator, just to redefine it, I'm talking about when AI technology allows any person the ability to make anything they want easily, right? Without much struggle. There'll come a point when they'll be able to push a button and an entire movie will be made. That's a bit further out than I'm talking. I'm talking about for the immediate future where we're going to be transitioning from one to the next. We'll move from artist to creator and then from creator to complete AI entertainment. We're not there for a while, so that's a topic for another Today show. But when we move over to the creator, to define creator being someone who has access to tools that allows them to create art in any field, right? So an artist who can create art in any field with intent. Like, you still have to, as an artist, you still, as many of our callers said, you still need to have an intent. You still need to have that creative idea, that creative thing that's coming from a place of perspective, of context. Like, we write music for a reason. If you write sad music, you're trying to put across sad music. You have a context for it. If you're writing to a scene, you're scoring to the scene. We will always need to exist in order to do that. But like, it just may get to the point where you are also the person who's directing the movie, who is doing the 3D art. You still need to have a why for all those questions. It's just you no longer need to hire someone else to fulfill the artistic roles of the intent you have in your head. And I do think the future will be a lot more suited to the jack of all trades. Like, that's one of the things I've always felt like weird about when I joined the music industry. I've said this a few times through the call, but just to reemphasize, is that my entire career, I've been surrounded by composers who are like, this is the only thing I've ever dreamed of doing. Like, music is part of my soul. It's the only thing I'll do until I die. Never had that feeling for music specifically. But I'm a successful music composer, and I think I'm pretty good at it. My clients seem happy enough. My passion has always been for everything, just making stuff in general. And I feel like people with that mindset are going to be the most suited to the future that AI is already starting to introduce to us. It'll be the creatively curious will be the ones who thrive in the future, because they'll be the ones that understand the reasons why you choose certain things. And when you have your whys in correlation and they're consistent, the end result of a creator project will be a better one than someone who just clicks together something that they think seems cool but has no sort of intent behind it. That will be the equivalent. I mean, we have that these days. Look at a shit movie compared to a really good movie. A really good movie is one that is very specifically hammered to be a certain way. And then you have like the sort of shit movies with lower budgets that are half-assed. That's what the future's going to be still, except it's going to be more of an individual basis. So instead of a film and us blaming 100 people for making that shitty movie and half-assing it, now it'll just be one person and be like, well, that wasn't very good. They clearly just clicked that thing together. Or like, that's clearly just the AI doing most of the work there. I think, as the previous caller mentioned, there will still be an X factor, but it'll be about the person who can combine all of the artistic fields into one succinct artistic vision, a very cut down, very no fat trimmed, you know what I mean? That is their vision in a nutshell. What they had in their brain, they were able to create, and we will put value in those creations. So we will move away, I think, from the ability to create, because everybody will have the ability to. The artistic craft will have no value, but we will move over to putting a lot more value in artistic intent, what the person meant to do. Like, because you can't change that. Like, you can tell when someone's not following, you can tell when someone's being inconsistent with their own story, even today. That won't change. But like, we already have AI that changes our intent. I mean, look at spell checkers, for example, that have grammar correction. It can tell the intent of a sentence you're trying to write, but only through, previous, it's seen how people have made this mistake and how they might want to change it. That's only going to get worse in the future, and that will apply to everything. So as the whys start going away, then we'll move, when I say the whys, I mean answering the question, why are you doing this to the character? Why are you making the character look like that? Why are you doing sad music here? When AI can understand how to answer those why questions, then we'll be moving away from creator to AI entertainment. That's the doomsday situation. But I feel like that's still at least like 20, 30 years away. I mean, we're on an exponential curve, so who knows, 5 years it may be different. But the immediate future, for practical purposes, you can't plan that far ahead. You can't be planning now to be making an AI that does everything. I mean, sure you can, but you're going to need to support yourself in the interim. You're going to need to have some sort of sense of self-worth and artistic endeavors in that time. Endeavor is a word I'm using a lot today. Like, you're still going to need that. So whilst it's important to keep in mind the doomsday situation, don't act upon it as pertinent information yet. It's coming, prepare for it, but don't build your life around that yet. I would say that now we're moving into the phase where artistry is going away, and we're moving towards creators, which is the next phase on that path, but we're going to be in this phase for a while. The point of this entire conversation today is to put the concept of the idea in people's heads, that if you are specializing in a field now, if you are solely focusing on being a composer, you have to accept the reality that within your career, the value of that position will go down significantly, possibly even to nothing. So long as you know that, you can start looking at ways that you can build a career that is ready for the future, not just for what is best for now. Like, I wish, like, that's the thing, like, people always say, if you could go back into the past and tell your previous self something, it's like, prepare for the future, don't prepare for the present. Like, when I got into music, I was preparing for music as it was, not how it was going to be. Now I prepare for things how that I think they're going to be. And, if I'm wrong, I can just adapt to what it is and be, like, behind the curve with everybody else. But if I'm right, I'm ahead of the curve and I win. So, like that, always keep on top of that. And remember that it's easier to adapt to the way the world is and the way the world's going to be than it is to lie to yourself and try to adapt the world to match your warped view of how it should be, right? You're never going to change the world. The world is its own organisms. That's like a single piece of, what would you call it? A single blood cell trying to determine the direction I'm walking. The direction I'm walking isn't determined by the blood, but the blood is required for me to make that decision. So society will decide how society decides. No one person decides how it's going to go. We all sort of go, yeah, a bit like that, not like that. Yeah, a bit like that, not like that. And we sort of steer the ship like that. We sort of steer it as a big entity, not as one person making it. Even though we have governments, we still determine things as society. That's why we still change laws that used to be laws, because society moves as a whole, and you can't really determine that. You can only predict. But yeah, it's much easier to adapt to the way you think society is going to go than to try and change as a single blood cell, trying to change the entire direction of society. So just be brutal with yourself. Like, lying to yourself won't get you anywhere. Wishing things would be different won't get you anywhere. Preparing for the future will get you somewhere. Preparing for what the future could be, even if you hate where it's going, if you can be realistic and say it's probably going to go that way, even though I fucking hate the way it's going, you can prepare for that so that when it happens, you're in the best situation. Because what you don't want to be is in a shit situation you don't want to be in, underprepared. Never do that. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to doomsday this conversation. I'm not trying to make you worry. I'm just saying that whilst you still have the time, maybe it's time to start broadening your horizons and focusing on a world where perhaps the value of music in general, I mean, music doesn't have value anymore. We don't even pay for music anymore. But I mean, like, being able to write music has no value anymore. Just be prepared for that to happen. But anyway, on that depressing note, thank you everybody for joining this TADay show on the future of artists versus creators. Thank you to all the people who called in today. Thank you to the chat room for going wild and talking about things completely off topic, as they tend to do. It's been a really useful conversation. I think a lot of, it's definitely opened my minds to things I hadn't already thought about, which is one of the main reasons I love doing this, particularly on contentious topics we don't know where they're going to go. Thank you so much to everybody for listening. Thanks to you watching. If you've made it the whole way through, I appreciate it. These TADay shows will eventually be going onto podcasts, websites. I'm trying to figure out how to extract the audio and get them put onto podcasts so that people can listen to these on their iPhones when they're having a shit or driving the car. So that's coming, but thank you. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is where the video is going to end. If you're watching this on Twitch, stick around. We've still got things to do today. But if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, whatever thing you have to do now to stay notified of my videos. But thank you for watching, and we shall see you guys in the next one.